Okay, before we move on to the next speaker, I do want to take this opportunity. I know some of you are just here for today and weren't here yesterday, so we'll do a little housekeeping here and make sure everybody's aware of what's going on and what we're doing here. If you need any kind of assistance during the conference, look for the volunteer tags. The volunteer tags have a big red V across it. Like there's one back there, he's holding it up. So if you need any help there, we also, speaking of, we have a conduct policy at this conference. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it at some point, or even if you haven't. If there's any issues at all during the conference, or you need any kind of escorts or anything like that, just anything at all, there are people around the conference wearing green buttons, and they're the ones you should see for any kind of assistance whatsoever. So they're there to help. So they've also received training from American Atheists. So they have a great program for dealing with things like that. So I strongly recommend, if you need anything, let them know. We also have 3 organizers for this conference. I was just reminded, there is a Twitter feed for this conference going on. It's a Twitter user, so it's @Atheist PA 2012. So if you are tweeting out there, please include us in any of your tweets. We'd really appreciate that. Oh, and the Atheist is singular. Remember that our website was atheistpa.org. The reason we chose that domain rather than something that was more conference related is the coalition that we've been trying to build, and I talked a little bit about that yesterday, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute. The coalition we're trying to build is for atheists and humanists in PA, and we want to be able to connect Pennsylvania and atheism and work together, and when we do big events, be able to use that domain to really kind of drive home the point that there are atheists in Pennsylvania. We do exist, even in Tioga County. Hi, Craig. So we do not deserve to be ignored, as I would say that our legislature has been doing. Yes, in the back.
I'd like to remind everybody that today is Blasphemy Day.
Yes.
And it is illegal in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is 6 states. So it is illegal.
Thank you, Sam. Anyway, all right, so I do also want to introduce our organizers, not Sam actually. One of our organizers, Scott Rhodes. He's the president of the Lancaster Free Thought. He's the president of the Lancaster Free Thought Society. They've been doing a lot of great work there out in Lancaster, and he's been really, really helpful with helping us put this together and making this event this weekend be the success I believe that it has been. And then myself, I am Brian Fields. I'm the president of Pennsylvania Nonbelievers. We are Central Pennsylvania's largest group of atheists, agnostics, humanists, heathens, so on and so forth. We've been around for about 10 years now, and we have a lot of longtime members here, and PA Nonbelievers has also been really involved with a lot of the planning as well. One of our volunteers right now one of our organizers right now, the third one, is not here in the room. The reason he's not in the room is because he is down at the Red Mass down in Washington, D.C. They are hopefully right now observing what's going on when the Catholic Church decides to try to influence our Supreme Court. So they're with Mike Newdow, who is actively working on cases there, and perhaps the interesting part about this is, on this agenda, we're talking about things like the Catholic Church has been talking about religious freedom and contraception and insurance companies and all that stuff, and Well, if the Supreme Court is being influenced by the Catholic Church at a church service where they're being preached at about how they should judge a particular case, does that mean they should recuse themselves? So that's why they're down there. We were going to have a protest, but unfortunately there is a new law that says we cannot protest events where the Secret Service is present. But we're not going to get into that right now. Okay, is there any other housekeeping you think I need to do? Should we move on to the program? All right. Next up, we have Holly Hartman. Holly Hartman is the group facilitator for Smart Recovery in Camp Hill. Smart Recovery is a science-based recovery program for people struggling with addiction and other issues. Holly will be coming up here to tell us more about that. There she is. So please, everyone, give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for your invitation to be here today to talk to you about Smart Recovery and what our program has to offer. And thank you, Sharon. What a great context for talking about our program. You've provided talking with us about rational approaches to living at a societal level. Now we're going to talk about a rational approach at a very personal level in our daily lives. So Smart Recovery is, as Brian said, it's a science-based, rational, evidence-based program for recovery. It's for really anyone who wants to be able to change a behavior that is operating in their life that is an unwanted behavior and they're having difficulty changing it. So just want to tell you right up front, it's not just for people who have issues with overuse of alcohol or drugs. It's really for anybody who has a behavior that is unwanted and is interfering with their life that they'd like to change. Important to note that it is a non-religious and non-12-step program, which increases the comfort level of the program for a lot of people. The purpose of Smart Recovery, like any other program for recovery, is to support individuals who have chosen to abstain or are considering abstinence from any type of addictive or compulsive behavior. And that could be substance use, but it could also be activities. So addictive or compulsive behaviors include things like overuse of the internet, gambling, overeating, overworking. There's all kinds of things that can be addictive or compulsive behaviors and can negatively influence people's lives. And how we help people is we teach them how to change self-defeating thinking and emotions and actions and work toward long-term satisfactions and a higher quality of life. We help our participants reach their desired lifestyle and life goals by removing what are the barriers to those goals, and those are their addictive or compulsive behaviors and their self-defeating thinking. I want to make it real clear right up front that although Smart Recovery uses many of the techniques and tools that are used in the mental health field and they're evidence-based, we are not a therapy group. So Smart Recovery self-help groups are not a substitute for therapy or prescription medication that your physician or mental health provider may have recommended. We do encourage people with co-occurring disorders to attend our meeting if they would find that helpful, and to continue seeing their therapist or their physician at the same time. Our program emphasizes personal responsibility and the power of choice. Smart Recovery believes that addictive and compulsive behavior is a behavioral choice. It is not an incurable condition. Our program emphasizes rational emotive behavioral therapy principles. We believe that we can choose to change the ways we think. When we do that, that changes the way we feel, and that ultimately changes the way we behave. We believe that the locus of power is located within the individual, rather than it being external to the individual. Smart Recovery uses a 4-point program that is science and evidence-based. It uses evidence-based concepts and practices such as the trans-theoretical model of behavioral change, motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral therapy, and rational emotive behavioral therapy. Our 4.0 program offers specific tools and techniques for each of those 4 program points. And the points of the program are, first, we work to build and maintain motivation to change our behavior. We learn about coping with urges to engage in a habitual behavior. We learn about problem solving, about managing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And we work to attain a lifestyle balance. Participants are then encouraged to learn how to use each of the program tools and to practice using the tools and techniques as they progress toward point 4 of the program, which is achieving lifestyle balance and leading a fulfilling and healthy life. And as you can see, we have quite a list of tools in our tool chest. And I'm just going to go through a couple of them to give you a feel and a good example of what it looks like to use the tools in our program. So for a participant working at point 1 for building and maintaining motivation, one of the tools that we encourage use of is our cost-benefit analysis. And that's just really taking a look at the behavior that you're wanting to change and looking at, well, what really are the advantages and the disadvantages of continuing this behavior? And on the flip side, what if I discontinue it? Then what are the advantages and disadvantages? And it becomes pretty clear when you sit down and do this, what the rational decision is. If for someone working at point 2, we might encourage self-awareness and self-reflection about the urges to engage in that behavior and encourage the use of an urge log, which helps people to identify what kinds of situations, events, things are cues and triggers for them to engage in their unwanted behavior. And then we also provide planning and use of coping strategies. So when someone has perhaps identified that this situation is a trigger for me to engage in this behavior that I don't want to be engaging in, we would encourage avoiding or escaping from those situations as a coping strategy early on in recovery. Later we would teach tolerance and ability to handle those situations. We encourage people to think behaviors through to the end. Okay, so as an example of that, you hear people say, I'll have just one. Well, I'll have just one is followed by a comma, not a period. Because how that really goes is I'll just have one, and then I'll have another one, and another one, and another one. And then I'll end up with all those consequences in my life that I don't want to be dealing with. So there's no comma after I'll have just one. Or there is a comma after I'll have just one. We encourage people to put things in perspective, to bring their thinking into the rational realm. So I'm having an urge, yes, the urge is uncomfortable, but it isn't awful. We encourage acceptance and that the understanding that urges are a normal part of recovery, that we can wait them out, we can ride the wave, and the urge will pass. And if we need help in the dealing with an urge, we can get social support. For someone working on point 3, problem solving, self-management of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, we have tools like unconditional self-acceptance, the ABCs of rational emotive behavioral therapy, problem solving and brainstorming techniques. We also use role play and rehearsal. To give you an example of one of those, the rational emotive behavioral therapy ABCs are probably our most popular and one of our most effective tools that our participants use. And what this does is help us understand how we got our behavior. So what's driving this behavior that I have? And what's making it so hard for me to stop it when I want to? It seems like I should be able to, but it's tough. So how the ABCs go is that A is for activating event, B is for beliefs, or the meaning we give the event or the story we tell ourselves about the event. C is for consequences, then what happens? After I have these beliefs and I give these meanings, how do I feel and what do I do? What are my feelings and behaviors? D is for dispute. This is where we begin to work with that situation and where we begin to get leverage to change and get ourselves into a position of having the power of choice. We can then develop effective beliefs, and we can see then how using our new effective beliefs will change our future and have things be different, so we can do it better next time. So I have an example scenario up here I'll just run through with you really quick. So say that my activating event is, at my job, my boss yelled at me for making a mistake. And usually what I'm aware of is my boss yelled at me, and now I'm angry, and I'm agitated, and I'm upset. And maybe what I did about that is I went to the bar and I drank a little too much. What most of us don't understand is between an activating event and what we did and what our behaviors are, is that there's a thought process that goes on that is unconscious to most of us. Because it comes automatic. It's like when you drive a car, you were very conscious of what you were doing in the beginning, but now you just do it. You don't think about it. Well, these thought tapes become unconscious in the same way because we think them habitually. And so in this case, in this activating event, my boss yelled at me for making a mistake. Actually, what was going on in my head is I was thinking, this is awful. I can't do anything right. I can't win. My boss is an ogre. This job is terrible. And you can see that it's quite natural that if that's what I was thinking, I would feel angry, agitated, and anxious. And then I would want to do something to relieve those feelings, and then maybe I went and had a drink, maybe I used a drug, maybe I went shopping and spent way too much money. So what can we do about that? We've got these unconscious beliefs and tapes going on that are driving our behavior. What we can do is we can dispute them. We can open them to inquiry. And we can ask ourselves, are these beliefs and meanings that I'm giving this situation true? Is there any evidence that they're not true? How about, are they helpful? Or are they harmful? Are they self-destructive? And it becomes pretty obvious in this case that this is awful. Probably isn't true. What's probably more true is the effective belief it's unpleasant to be confronted with my mistake, but it's not awful. We can look at, is it true that I can't do anything right? I can't win. No, probably what's more true is it's okay to make mistakes, and no one is perfect, and I can learn from this. We can look at, my boss is an ogre. Probably not true. Promise he doesn't look anything like Shrek. So what's probably more true is my boss was upset about the inconvenience my mistake caused. And then this job is terrible. You know, if I really step back and take the broader view, what's probably so is that my job's challenging sometimes, but on average, it's a pretty good job. The other thing we can look at is the helpful, harmful aspect, and we can see that, you know, thinking these kind of things isn't really helping me, it's not getting me where I want to go, and some of that is kind of harmful and hurtful. So I might want to choose then to substitute my more effective beliefs for those not so effective, irrational beliefs that I've been having. And that's where the power of choice comes in. So our tagline is discover the power of choice. That's the choice. You can choose to change what you think. You can choose what thoughts you choose to entertain. So if we go back to the activating event then, my boss yelled at me for making a mistake. And we run through it now with our new effective beliefs. And how we responded to that, what we told ourselves is, it's unpleasant to be confronted with my mistake, but not awful. It's okay to make mistakes, but no one's perfect, and I can learn from this. My boss was just upset about the inconvenience that my mistake caused. He'll get over it. And this job is challenging sometimes, but on average, it's a pretty good job. How am I feeling now? How I'm feeling now, I'm feeling calm, I'm feeling confident, I'm feeling composed, and I'm not so likely to go out and engage in some unwanted behavior. Finally, for point 4, examples of how things that we suggest to help people find a lifestyle with a balance of long and short-term satisfaction are we suggest that our participants look at things like regaining and maintaining their health, eating well, sleeping well, exercising. We suggest the use of relaxation techniques, especially as coping strategies for stress management. We suggest that folks take a look at your values, take a look at what you really care about in life, and then take a look at how is your lifestyle, how is your living lining up with that. And we encourage people to set new and healthy, balanced lifestyle goals in lots of the areas I'm listed here. For those of you who can't see, some of those are artistic activities, continuing education, family and friends, fun and leisure, social activities, the work and financial area of life. If you were to attend one of our meetings, how you would find that would go is a typical meeting lasts an hour and a half to 2 hours. And what we do is we welcome the participants. We talk about confidentiality and safety for a minute or two. And then everybody introduces themselves, first name and the town they're from. We have some opening statements that describe what Smart Recovery is like and what our meeting format will be so folks know what to expect. We ask for participants to share about successes they've had in the past week. We like to start off on a really upbeat tone. Then we do agenda setting. And in our program, it's our participants who set the agenda. So folks who come to the meeting get to suggest what's going on for them, what issue they're having, what they want to talk about, what topic they want to address in the work time. And then the bulk of the meeting is spent on work time and group discussion. Then we pass the hat for donations. Our meetings are free, but donations are gratefully accepted to help us cover our legitimate expenses. And then we have a checkout where folks can share what was meaningful for them, what was helpful for them from the group interaction and discussion, and what homework they'll take on, what commitments they'll make for the coming week to continue to work on changing their unwanted behavior. And then there's just a little time at the end for socializing. Our meetings are open. So in our meetings, participants who intend to abstain but who have not yet been successful are welcome to attend. Smart Recovery makes no judgments about the use of prescription medication when taken as directed. So for example, folks who are on methadone maintenance are very welcome. Our arms are open to them for attending our meetings. We view religion and spirituality as a personal preference rather than an essential part of recovery. So spirituality is not typically discussed in our meeting. Our meetings are strength-based. Everyone has the ability to change regardless of our past circumstances, and we don't dwell on the past. Our meetings are very focused. Our emphasis is on today and the future, not on the past and where we came from. They're very engaging. So most of the meeting is in group discussion time. In our meetings, we do encourage member interaction, so crosstalk is encouraged in our meetings. And our Smart Recovery program is short-term. So participations in our meeting is typically from 6 months to 2 years, as long as people are finding it necessary. Very rarely is anyone involved in Smart Recovery for a lifetime. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Smart Recovery's stance with respect to other recovery programs. And Smart Recovery believes that each individual finds his or her own path to recovery. For some of our participants, that path might include a 12-step program like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, or other self-empowering groups like Women for Sobriety, Life Rings Secular Recovery, Moderation Management, or Secular Organizations for Sobriety. Although the Smart Recovery approach differs from each of those other approaches, it doesn't necessarily exclude them, so we're not an exclusive group. Some Smart Recovery participants choose to attend other meetings when they cannot attend a Smart Recovery meeting, as they construct their own paths to recovery, and we encourage them to do so if they find that helpful. Now, what's really prevalent in this area, in fact, it's pretty much the only game in town in this area, are 12-step programs. And so we frequently get the question, and I want to address it with you here, how does Smart Recovery compare to 12-step programs? How's it similar? How's it different? Well, how it's similar is purpose. Okay, so pretty much all recovery programs are centered around helping folks abstain from unwanted behaviors. So we do that too. Both types of programs are run by nonprofit organizations. Both offer free self-help group meetings. Both have meetings that are standardized and run by a structured format. And in both programs, what's critical is that participants must apply the program tools in their daily lives in order to achieve their goals. So in neither of these programs, none of these programs will it work to just go to meetings. People have to do the work in their daily lives at home. That's about where the similarities end. How Smart Recovery is different from 12-step programs is, first of all, in foundation. So 12-step programs begin, and their entry point is in the spiritual dimension of self. That's their foundation. In Smart Recovery, our program is scientific and evidence-based, and we deal with the cognitive behavioral domain. Smart Recovery discourages labels. We strongly believe that people are not their behavior, they can change their behavior. That's a little different from 12-step programs where people are encouraged to label themselves as an alcoholic, as an addict, which kind of gives the message, I am my behavior. The Smart Recovery orientation is solution focused. We begin at the present state and move to the future state. Whereas in 12-step programs, there tends to be a problem focus where there's things like lists and inventories of wrongs and shortcomings are part of the program, and reflection on the past is a large part of the program. Between the two programs, the mechanism of recovery is different. In 12-step programs, the mechanism of recovery is that a higher power removes character defects. Whereas in Smart Recovery, the mechanism of recovery is that we give people tools and techniques that empower them to be able to make new choices and develop new behavior patterns. Smart Recovery is different from 12-step programs in where we place the locus of power. In other words, where the leverage point is. In 12-step programs, there is a belief in personal powerlessness. That's actually a statement in the 12 steps. And the locus of power is external. It's the higher power that removes the character defects, and it's the conscious contact with a higher power that allows one to maintain one's sobriety or recovery. In SMART, we believe that the locus of power is internal, and we strongly emphasize self-reliance. The length of participation between the programs is different, since many 12-step programs view addictive or compulsive behaviors as incurable conditions. Participation in those may need to be lifelong. Whereas in Smart Recovery, we believe that people can and do recover. In fact, there's a lot of scientific research out there that verifies that. Many people, about half of people, recover naturally with no intervention at all. They don't go to groups, they don't go to therapy, they just decide they want to recover, and they do. So we know that. So in Smart Recovery, typically people attend meetings for 6 months to 2 years. Some of us can stay on and work as facilitators if we choose to do that. Our meeting content and leadership is a little bit different in Smart Recovery. The topics for discussion are chosen by participants, and our meetings are led by trained, certified facilitators. Whereas in 12-step programs, topics tend to be chosen by a volunteer leader, and meetings are led by volunteers from the group. For group participation style, in 12-step groups, it's actually a tradition that there's no crosstalk. So when one person speaks, no one else in the group addresses what that person said. There's no feedback in the meeting. Smart Recovery is the opposite. We very much encourage feedback between group members. We encourage group discussion and group members problem solving together to help each other. And the last difference between the programs that is pretty obvious is in social supports. In 12-step programs, support is offered by mentoring. So participants are encouraged to get a sponsor and to use that sponsor as a mentor, and they are encouraged to have buddies within the program and to use their phone list and call buddies. Whereas in Smart Recovery, we do encourage the development of a support system, but we leave that up to the individual as they do their own change plan worksheet to develop what their support system would be, what their network would be. It may include program people both in the Smart Recovery group, but in most cases includes lots of folks outside the Smart Recovery program too. So that's all I have to present to you. I want to thank you for your kind attention, and now I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have about our program.
Dauphin County legal system is trying to get into smart policing. Is your program connected with legal systems so that judges can assign potential people to you as opposed to a 12-step program?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, there is a specific Smart Recovery program. It's called Inside Out, that is used in correctional facilities. So SMART in other localities is very, very much involved in the legal system. And in some places in Pennsylvania, actually, SMART is the recovery program that is used in a correctional facility. And yes, if judges choose to, they may recommend that folks attend Smart Recovery meetings, and we are happy to sign whatever papers they need to have signed to verify that they've attended.
My name is Tom, and I'm a drug and alcohol counselor.
Hi, John.
I'm going to get that joke. Come on. Thank you. Well, my question is, I think it's great because there's not a lot of, when I dealt with clients, I don't disclose my own atheism because I keep that, I don't disclose anything about myself working with clients, but I find it over and over again that a lot of clients have a problem with the spirituality concept of the 12 steps. So I think it's great that there is something around here. I'm starting out with a comment. I'm going to take some information that I can actually spread to some of my clients to try to get more people going. And I really do like the evidence-based approach. My question, though, is the only thing that sticks out to me is there's overwhelming evidence from the medical model about the disease concept, and that compulsive behaviors are basically an incurable disease because it works with the ventral tegmental area, the dopaminergic reaction and response from that part. So when you talk about being not incurable, saying that it's a curable disease, what a lot of people with compulsive behaviors hear is, well, that means that I can drink socially again. And there's really a lot of evidence out there that shows that that's not possible. We're probably aware of like the Sobel studies that were pretty much abysmal of whether they saw that they try to teach social drinking to alcoholics, and not very many could ever do it. And then kind of the interpretation is that folks that could weren't really truly have that addiction, that the brain abnormality wasn't there. So my question is, how do you then work with that? That it's not incurable? How does that?
I'm gonna answer that from my background as a scientist. Okay, so what is in the scientific literature out there is what we know is that there are people who have a genetic predisposition toward addictive behavior. And what that means is that there are certain aspects of their physiology, for example, maybe the level of neurotransmitters that their body makes, that may be lower than in other people, okay? And that's no different than any other genetic difference that people may have. So they are predisposed by virtue of that aspect of their physiology, that if they use substances, they're very likely to continue, and they're more likely to have difficulty stopping. That doesn't mean that they will become an addict, okay? It does mean that if they do, they indeed may have more difficulty stopping, but it's not a general rule. It's kind of the individual physiology, the individual makeup.
Hi, I come from a 12-step background, and I missed a little bit of your talk in the beginning. Are you trying to make some inroads into trying to take over the 12-step and get rid of it? Because a lot of people go in there and they just either continue their dependency on other substances like cigarettes, which is just as addictive as cocaine or something else, and so they're really not solving their problem. And but is there any kind of plan to get in and, maybe I missed it in the beginning, but is there some way that you can get in and get them smart?
Well, I think what we're trying to do, actually the Camp Hill Smart Recovery Group is the very first open SMART group in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So what we're very excited about is the potential of being at places like this where we can speak with a receptive audience like yourself and find more people who are willing to facilitate meetings so that we can have more meetings and make this option available. I really hear what those of you who have asked questions are saying about and know from my own experience working in this field in the area of social work that there are a great number of individuals out there who find the religious posturing in the 12-step programs very off-putting and sometimes an insurmountable obstacle. So it is critical that there be other options available. Are we trying to get rid of 12-step programs? No, we're not. Because in fact, there are people who find value in that. And we encourage people to do what is useful for them. So, and actually in our own group, we have people who do both. They go to both kinds of meetings and they find that useful because for them, each program is working for them at a different dimension of self. So I would say that our aim is more to coexist and to provide a viable option for folks who choose to attend our programs.
You mentioned donations, and you said we now have something in Pennsylvania. How do you pay for this, and how far do I have to go to find one? Is it practical for people not to have to drive too far? Do you have enough critical mass so that it's handy? And I'm curious how you pay for it. I bet the donations don't do it.
Yeah, we're just getting started. And to be honest, if you're going to start a recovery group, like my co-facilitator and I just have, you'll put in some money out of your own pocket unless you are affiliated with an organization who will cover those expenses for you. And eventually, over a period of time, it does come back. You can reimburse yourself from the donations that are provided by participants. There's not a lot of cost involved with running a SMART group. You really just need a meeting space. A lot of times, as in our group, the Giant Store has been very generous Since we are a nonprofit helping organization, they provide us with the space free of charge. So our costs are local costs are very minimal. Camp Hill right now is the only group. We'd love to have other groups get started. If you're interested in participating in that, please see me. But aside from that, Smart Recovery is available online. So there are Smart Recovery meetings available online every day of the week. There's a chat room available to help people that's open 24/7, and there's lots and lots of great information out there on the website. So that is a mechanism we encourage folks who need more than a once-a-week supports to use, or people who are too far away to drive. They can use the online resources.
Your program is really exciting, and I'm glad to hear about the things you're doing. I have one question, and I do have to be that guy, so I just want to ask, what about relapse rates, and how effective is the program? And has there been studies done to see how effective the program has been?
There's currently a clinical trial ongoing to assess the effectiveness of Smart Recovery itself. We don't have that data available yet. What we do have, however, is there's been a lot of research done. For example, the MATCH study in the 80s that included 2,000 participants and showed that motivational interviewing, which is one of the tools we use, is a very, very effective technique. And these were very well-controlled, randomized clinical trials of these therapies and techniques. Similar studies have been done with irrational emotive behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. So while we're just now getting into testing the Smart Recovery program itself, the tools and techniques that we use in the program have been shown to be effective, and that's well published in the scientific literature.
You touched on the genetic predisposition for having an addictive personality and how that plays in factors into things. I found in my personal experience, people that go through 12-step programs mostly replace the addiction to harmful things with addiction to religion almost. In some part, that's part of the process, which is productive in reducing the harmful drugs, whatever it happens to be, but it also doesn't necessarily mitigate the addictive qualities in there. It kind of leaves them subject to a relapse almost.
Mm-hmm.
How does your program kind of adjust to that whole, basically, do you work on mitigating the addictive personalities, or do you try to replace it with something else like the 12-step program does? And is that part of the reason that you actually got into doing this alternative style of helping?
Okay, I don't know if I would agree with you that the aim of the 12-step program is to replace an addictive behavior with a different addiction. I would say that it is very, very common in the recovery process that if the underlying driver for the addictive or compulsive behavior is not addressed, which it may or may not be in the 12-step program, it can happen that that drive is just transferred to another behavior as opposed to the drive being addressed. So what we do differently in Smart Recovery, and that's why I took the time to take you through the ABC example, is we help people understand what inside them is driving that behavior, what unconscious process is. And when that unconscious process is brought to light and dealt with and resolved, then the likelihood of transferring that addictive impulse into another behavior is less likely.
Thank you for coming, Holly. I'm going to bear witness here for the Smart Recovery Group. 21 years ago, my brother Kevin, after being severely depressed all his life, tried the 12-step, and not coming from we were not raised in a religious house. The 12-step program did nothing for Kevin, and 21 years ago he killed himself. Last December, after many years of my own depression, I laid open my wrist hoping to die, and after hospitalization, partial hospitalization, I joined Holly's SMART group last January or February, and I realized a couple of weeks ago that at some point my daily process of planning my own demise stopped. And I can see now that really with the help of the SMART group as a weekly attendance, because you will not believe how hard it is to get in to see a counselor. Most of the practices are full, and that's even assuming you can find a counselor who's a good fit for you. But thanks to this group, I have somehow turned a corner someplace. I still need help. I still will go to the group, but I'm a witness. I'm an example of how this type of help can really help people with behaviors that they would like to change. So thank you.
It's very hard to follow that one. But I just had one other follow-up question to my earlier questions. And one of the issues with 12-step programs, I think, is that they take a very dogmatic approach to their recovery system. They have these 12 steps. They were set down by the founder. There's no rational approach to why they think those 12 steps would work, other than that was the opinion of their founder. If anybody would question that, there's resistance to adjusting it. And so my question is, let me add on a little background. In science and medicine, we learn things all the time. Things change. The therapy that may have been advocated for 10 years ago may not be advocated for today. I just would like to hear the smart recovery's approach, and does it follow more of the scientific model, where as our knowledge changes, that the program itself will change as well, and rather than sticking to some dogmatic adherence to a set of beliefs?
Absolutely, great question. And I didn't mention, so I'll mention it now. For those of you who haven't seen, there's a poster out there about Smart Recovery, and it talks, I didn't talk a lot here about Smart Recovery as an organization, and the operations model that we use. But there's a lot of that information on the poster, so I encourage you to look at that if that's something you're curious about. But Brian, to answer your excellent question, as we said, Smart Recovery is science-based and science-driven. About 50% of our board of directors are scientists, and there's a commitment to keep it that way. So that and there is a commitment to change and evolve as scientific evidence comes in. So that's actually written into our program goals, or our principles, that we will change and evolve as new information becomes available. And you can see that if you look back through the Smart Recovery literature over the years, you can actually see that they've done it, and they've done a really great job at it. So thank you, that was a great question.
I had a professor who was explaining that addiction was the disease of the ego, and that explains why 12-step program works for everything from sex addiction to alcohol. And it sounds like you're actually going directly to behavior and the ego and restructuring that. This is a great approach.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Last question.
I think I support your concept. However, I have to go back to something that Tom mentioned earlier, and in my own understanding of the science, once you begin taking certain substances, a number of substances, you're changed. To quote a neurological researcher I know, once you're pickled, you're never going to be a cucumber. And so, how does that factor in? Do you have to work around that?
We do, and there's actually lots of medical evidence and published evidence around that. That in some cases, particularly, for example, in methamphetamine addiction, physiological changes that occur in those folks once they've indulged in use of that substance for a while are irreversible. And so we know, yes, that that can happen and that may be a lifelong challenge for those folks. And yet, the Smart Recovery Program, we're dealing with that internal impulse to engage in addictive or compulsive behavior, can help and reduce the urge to do that.
Thank you, Holly. That has been enjoyed greatly.